The Bureaucrat, a novel by Levi Sweeney. Read by the author. Chapter 23. The Editor. From the personal email account of Rod Bergeron, J.D., Ph.D., LCSW, etc. Confidential. Rod, thanks for agreeing to correspond by email. Also, thank you for employing a secure internal messaging system. I appreciate your professionalism. Per your request, I am now writing down in complete but relatively concise detail a more or less specific full account of the events of April 1st, 2015. I was about 20 years old, and I had been seeing Miss Tran for some 4 months. We were kind of in a relationship. We were just kids, really. Very bad sense of boundaries at the time, honestly, and even worse ideas about our mutual expectations. I had gotten the bright idea, the attention from her had perhaps gone to my head a bit, of mysteriously whisking her away to a local disused park near our college, within the general vicinity of New Haven, Connecticut, at around midnight. It was all in good fun until it wasn't. The short version is that I made a complete fool of myself, accidentally doused us both with several cans of cheap beer. It had been my idea of a practical joke, something about settling a bet about, whether you could successfully play chess while intoxicated. I'd rather forget the details, honestly. I do know that it wasn't funny, either then or in hindsight. And when she demanded I take her back to her off-campus rental house, I complied. Unfortunately, we were flagged down by a local cop. I accidentally ran a red light, who immediately arranged for us both to be detained in the sobering cell of a local county jail on suspicion of DUI and underage alcohol consumption. No charges were filed, neither of us were technically intoxicated, but the entire experience was unspeakably humiliating, especially to Miss Tran. A local weekly newspaper actually ran a story, much to the dismay of both our respective parents. One longtime executive at my father's company actually read the story and recognized the names of the unfortunate young people mentioned therein. The situation was very traumatic for both me and Miss Tran, and we became significantly estranged. The debacle immediately escalated to our respective parents and nearly destroyed the decades-long personal and professional relationship between our families. I don't think Elena's father even knew she had a significant other of any type until that night. I'm not sure even my dad was totally aware of it at the time. Things were bad then. Really bad. To cut a long story short, I voluntarily exiled myself to Seattle as an all but unspoken precondition of continued peace between the D family and the Tran family. That is why my degree is from the University of Washington and not Yale, even though I technically studied at both institutions. The rift closed while I was away. Lena's father and my father were always inseparable. They immediately began attempts to mend fences after I was out of the picture, but my time on the West Coast was probably time well spent, honestly. I came back home at just the right time. All in God's timing, I guess. Miss Tran, who is standing over my shoulder right now as I type this email, agrees completely. She was honorably discharged from the Navy about a month prior to my return to the East Coast. I'll see you for our monthly appointments at your office downtown sometime before MLK Day next month. I'll confirm the exact date and put it on my calendar ASAP. Merry Christmas, sir. Regards, Thomas D. New Year's Eve, 2024. Nighttime. The D family home, Long Island, New York. It was 7:30 p.m. It was dark out, snowing. Thomas D. and Lena Tran were sitting in the living room, in front of a fake fireplace, having a friendly conversation. They're both seated in armchairs, facing each other. They are alone in the house. Mom and Dad were at a New Year's party in Rhode Island. Gee, when is Julia getting back from that New Year's Eve thing she got invited to? Thought Thomas. Who was that guy picking her up earlier? Sweet car, but... And then... Oh well. Lena, smiling, said, "All right, I've got one. Bureaucrat." Thomas was dead serious. He had a poker face on right now. He had gotten it out of the mothballs recently. He liked it better than the firewall. Bureaucrat, he said. C, bureaucracy. Derived from bureaucrate, French. Literal English translation of bureaucracy is government by men who sit at desks. Bureaucrat. B-U-R-E-A-U-C-R-A-T. Bureaucrat. Lena mock-clapped very excitedly. She and Thomas both burst out in fits of snickering. He was in very good shape these days. Yoga and tennis were good for that. He still hadn't told her the story. The whole story. Lena grinned, even more impishly, far more impishly than Julia ever could. Julia had never had a boyfriend. But, well, where was Julia right now? He settled back into his big plush armchair. Thomas D. said, "Definition, per Glassman, et al. A synonym for a teacher, archaic." Lena pointed a very fine index finger at Thomas. "You? A teacher?" she said. "I can see that, but are you really a bureaucrat, Thomas?" Thomas shook his head, scoffed, and pointed at himself, and said, The Bureaucrat. Lena sipped some wine. Very old, expensive wine. Thomas had a glass too. Maybe a promising young Pole could use a few more bureaucrats in his corner, he said slightly. Or her corner. Thomas D. shook his head. You don't learn anything in politics until you quit. As for me, Politics. It is in the past. It is time for something new. Lena. All right then, now that you're an educated man and you know things I don't, do you want to teach me something interesting? Thomas took another sip of wine. Lena grinned and tried a different approach. Baltimore, she said. Yes, I start in March. Isn't it just convenient that my dad just found a personal trainer gig for me at a random private gym, which just so happens to be located in the exact same office building as your new place of work? Thomas D. smiled indolently, not unlike his father when about to buy out a failing paper and then turn it around. Extremely convenient, said Thomas. More giggling from both this time. Their parents trusted them. These offspring were responsible adults, of course, not children. Thomas stared into his wine glass. It wasn't all the way empty, yet. Where was Julia? Did she forget that she was supposed to be here to keep Lena and Thomas company and make a light dinner? Where was Julia? So, said Lena, setting her crystal flute down, I want to know. Everything. Straight from the horse's mouth. Julia doesn't know about everything. But you do, Vlad. Thomas sighed. He gave up. Fine, my very, very late Christmas gift to you, LT, he said, causing Lena to rock back and forth in her seat, chuckling with joy. I'll tell you everything, since we are alone. Lena got up, walked across the living room in 3 quick strides, and then snuggled up next to Thomas in his armchair, there being plenty of room in that oversized armchair he was sitting in. She put her head on his shoulder. I am listening intently, Mr. Chairman, she said, as seriously as possible, albeit with a big smile on her face. Go on. Thomas nodded. Well, it all started when I was sitting alone in my teeny apartment, not doing anything, and I felt like calling my grandma to talk. Julia got home a bit late. She was waving at someone in an idling car, shouting, Peace out, Romeo, from her spots in the wide-open front doorway. Then, smiling and humming a Van Halen song to herself, she shut the front door, sauntered through the foyer into the kitchen, to find Thomas and Lena eating grilled cheese sandwiches on sourdough bread. Oh, Thomas and Lena. They were alone all night? Julia's thoughts. Crap, I was supposed to babysit those two. Shoot, forgot, again. Thomas and Lena just sat there at the kitchen counter, munching quietly together. There was a digital clock on the wall. It was 1:08 a.m. She was home very, very late. Hey, said Thomas to a full mouth, who in God's name is Romeo? Julia turned as white as baking soda. Her thoughts. Oh my God, how much did he hear you say? Julia's mouth began moving involuntarily. He's coming over tomorrow morning. Dad will really, really, really like him, and... Thomas held up a flat hand. Sit down and eat a sandwich, Julia. You look like you could use a few right now. Lena made them. Julia paused, took a deep breath, nodded, and walked into the kitchen, sat down, and began eating a very big sandwich which Lena gave her. So, LT, said Thomas, wiping his mouth, you're reading To Kill a Mockingbird for the 70th time? 4th, you jerk, said Lena, smiling big. Julia ate. Munch, munch, munch. Sorry, said Thomas. I suffered from the sin of pride. Yeah, I'm reading the Divine Comedy right now. First time reading the whole thing, cover to cover, actually. It's great. Christmas night. 2025. 2025. 5. New times. It had been a big party. Big. The D family, the whole D family, loved Christmas. Especially this Christmas. The Crown Prince was back in town. It had been a year since he got back. He was back for good. No more ambiguity. And there were rumors about a Crown Princess somewhere in the mix of things. Someone, somewhere, it was Jane, was whispering to Wanda about those kids going ring shopping. Just rumors, of course. Honest. Complete speculation. Really. Thomas and Lena kept laughing it off. They both just seemed so happy and... Thomas and JJ had a long talk that morning while they were shoveling snow together. They mainly talked about the relevant logistical concerns in regards to honeymoons. Later, on this fine winter evening, JJD had finally met Julia D's boyfriend right before the Christmas party started. JJ was pleasantly surprised. Julia D's boyfriend was a dapper young man named Porter Goldstein, a smooth as silk, very tall 22-year-old med school student, and who was also very black. Port had kindly brought over a homemade fruitcake. He had baked it himself. JJD liked the fruitcake. JJD's stomach did not like the fruitcake. Ugh. JJD and Michael Tran loved speaking to each other in Russian. It was past midnight. Some of the cousins were still awake, but everyone else was asleep or had gone back home, or back to their hotels. There were a few young Ds with big trust funds and cool tattoos on their forearms, shooting pool in the bonus room right now. Thomas was in bed. Lena and her mom had gone back to their hotel. Julia was playing a card game with her mom somewhere else in the house. Both of the two men sitting on chairs on the back porch right now were wearing very expensive watches. Nobody could understand them right now, even if anyone was listening, which nobody was. Even Thomas couldn't have listened fast enough if he were standing right there. Politics, JJ said, in Russian, shaking his head. No. My son is not boring, not in the slightest. Even he gets that by now. Lots of surprises in that young man's future, certainly. But, well, I think that's everything. That's the whole story. Thomas said I could tell anyone I wanted at this point, but yes. Can't think of anything else that happened after that. He and Michael Tran were sitting on plastic chairs from Walmart on the back porch of JJ's house, which was swept free of snow by Thomas and JJ that morning. There was a miniature blue recycle bin nearby, with an undisclosed quantity of empty brown glass bottles in it, all labeled Dante's old-fashioned root beer. I still don't believe what you said about Jane, said JJ in Russian. Oh, help me, St. Joseph, here we go again, replied Michael, also in Russian. Look, said JJ, sitting back in his plastic chair, isn't it just convenient that your son sends your daughter to the exact same summer camp as my son, like 15 years ago, and then, as if by magic, a few years later, your wife suddenly thinks it's just fine for Lena to minor in German, when I know for a fact you want her to minor in, like, comp sci or whatever. Let it go, James, said Michael Tran, very, very coolly. He'd always been the tortoise to JJ's hair. It all worked out, said Michael. Everything's going to be fine. I keep saying this, but listen, the kids are all right. Silence. For a while. And then... I know Rich Everett very well, actually, said Michael Tran, still in Russian, with only a slight Vietnamese accent after some 40 years of American citizenship. He is a good man. Said JJ. Sitting outside on plastic chairs in below freezing weather in the state of New York, and doing that for about 20 minutes once a year, was basically as extreme as JJ and Michael got these days. Their wives let them do it, just so they could feel young again, just so they could feel young once in a while. Totally harmless. Right this moment, a very attentive second cousin of Wanda's named Kong was sitting very quietly on the other side of the sliding glass door which led out to the back porch. He couldn't hear the two older men, but he was watching them like a hawk. JJD was the co-founder of the Maverick Group. Michael Tran was the other co-founder of the Maverick Group. JJ and Michael continued speaking in Russian. It is quite a story, James, about your son, said Michael Tran. I'm just honored that you told me, of all people, first. You should try writing it down, unless Thomas wants... I am a journalist, said JJ slowly. I already did. It is what I do. I tell stories. Thomas wants me to interpret what happened. We trust each other. Said Michael. And by the way, said JJ, as sarcastically as possible, that literary magazine you tried running back in Manila was trash. I am very, very glad I convinced you to try bookkeeping instead. As am I, said Michael, who replied graciously. By the way, that general ledger you showed me back in San Francisco was trash. I am very, very glad I convinced you to hire Miss Wanted, who, to keep your books instead. Chuckling from both memories. I have indigestion, Michael. As do I, James. And Michael, I want my son's wedding to be in Vegas in May of next year. Palm Beach in August. JJ, my daughter, and your son are getting married in August. We'll talk about this in the morning, Michael. Throaty laughed from the two best friends. A bit of silence. And then, in English. JJ. Well, 20 minutes is up. There's a clock over there which says so. Come on, let's get one of your nephews to drive you back to your hotel already. Merry Christmas, you jerkwad. Replied Michael. Merry Christmas, you dingbat. Thanks. The end. This is The Bureaucrat, a novel read by the author. You've been listening to Chapter 23. Thank you.